Swimming fast breaststroke is all about keeping resistance as low as possible. But unfortunately, there are a lot of times in breaststroke where swimmers have to create a lot of resistance either to breathe or to recover the arms or recover the legs. So the key to keeping resistance low is to execute these skills well, and more importantly, execute them really fast. Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. Getting back in line is an absolutely critical skill in breaststroke. Not only does it have to be done well, it has to be done fast. And a lot of swimmers struggle with both aspects. And the faster they want to go, the more keeping resistance low is important, yet the more difficult it is to actually get back into line when the stroke rate is so high. As a result, a lot of swimmers will try to get their tempo up higher and higher and higher, and that makes it harder and harder and harder to get back into line. They end up using a lot more energy and not really swimming a whole lot faster. Let's take a look at how to help swimmers get back in line fast so that they can swim fast. Why does getting back into alignment matter? Well, when swimmers breathe, when they're recovering the arms, it's pretty much, in terms of speed, the position of death. The head is up, the hips are down, the arms are plowing forwards, and that's going to create a ton of resistance. And it's also going to create no propulsion because the arms obviously aren't creating any, and the legs can't be creating any either because the swimmers aren't going to kick until they get back forward after the recovery. And so swimmers are creating a ton of resistance. They're creating zero propulsion, and this movement often happens slowly. So not only are swimmers creating a lot of resistance, creating no propulsion, which means they're going to slow down and sometimes almost or even come to a stop. The longer it takes, which in a lot of swimmers it does take a long time, the more speed they're going to lose and the slower they're going to go. And so this is a position that swimmers do not want to be in, yet way too many swimmers spend much too much time here, and they make the position worse than it needs to be. And so the faster swimmers can get back into alignment, the faster they can get out of that position, the better they're going to be able to create speed because they're going to keep resistance low and they're going to be able to create more propulsion sooner. So how do swimmers actually get back in line and get back in line fast? There are two key aspects of it. One is recovering the breath, and two is recovering the arms. And so during the breath, the actual breath itself needs to be forward rather than just up. So that's going to set the stage for getting back into line fast. And the breath recovery itself needs to be really aggressive, it needs to be really forward, and it also needs to be moving down. So if swimmers are being really aggressive with recovering the upper body, recovering the head forward and down, they're going to be a lot more effective in getting back into alignment fast. They don't want to be patient with it, they want to be aggressive, and the more aggressive they are, the faster it'll happen. And the same thing happens with the arms. They need to be driven forward fast, they need to be driven forward aggressively, and they need to be driven forward directly. That gets the swimmer back level down with the water faster, and it gets them in position where they can create propulsion with the arms faster. If swimmers are passive with the arms, if they're moving them up, if they're shooting them down, it's not a direct line, the hand speed's not there, and so that means it's going to take longer before they get back into position. And it's all about speed and momentum. And so if you can imagine that the body's kind of like a seesaw, when the head comes up, the hips are going to drop down a little bit, but if the head and the chest can get thrown forward fast, then that's going to drive the hips back up, just like a seesaw. Press down on one side really aggressively, the other side's going to pop back up. And so the impact on that seesaw is going to be much more significant if the breath and the arms are working together and they get back forward, they get back in line fast together. It's like pressing harder on that seesaw because everything's getting pressed at the same time, and that's going to get the hips up in line even faster. And so it's not just doing these actions well, it's doing these actions well at the same time. So if we watch this swimmer here, he's just finished his pull, and you can see how aggressive he is with the arms and the head. He slams them forward, he slams them down, and if you watch the hips, what's going to happen here, the hips are maybe down a little bit, and then all of a sudden, they pop right back up as a result of throwing the head, the chest, and the arms forward. And so again, being really aggressive and then driving everything forward and down is going to help the swimmer get forward. That's going to pop the hips up, and the swimmer's going to get back in a line really fast. In this particular swimmer, this is over 100 meters, and it's at world record speed, and you can see how fast that happens, and as a result, he gets back into a line every single stroke, but he's using a really high stroke rate. He's not being patient with it. He's being really aggressive, and yet he's still able to get back in line. And that's because he does a great job of being aggressive with the recovery of the arms and the breathing each and every stroke cycle. We can see the same thing with these athletes with their recoveries over the water. You can see how aggressive they are in driving everything forwards, and you can see the hips pop up with that little splash right in the back of the stroke. And it's the same thing as that previous swimmer. They're being really aggressive with the arm recoveries, really aggressive with the breath recovery, and that's going to help them get in line fast, let the hips pop up. And this is over a 50-meter race, and so they're still going to get in line each and every stroke, and they're going to make that happen by being really aggressive with their recoveries of the breath and the arms. So what's the challenge with improving this skill? The biggest issue is that swimmers don't understand what fast means. They really lack aggression, and they already think they're going fast, so they don't see much reason to go any faster. They already think they're doing the skill, and so when you tell them to go fast, they may make a tiny adjustment, and it's going to feel like a big adjustment, but it's not nearly what it needs to be in order to be successful. And so in that regard, words don't necessarily change their perspective of what they have to do or what they're trying to accomplish, and instead, we have to try to force a change. They have to be able to feel what fast recoveries are, what aggressive recoveries really are. And if not, the same is going to be the same. If we just ask them to do something different, it's going to be really hard for them to break out of what they're doing. We got to give them different strategies where they can feel it and they can be challenged by it and they can almost be forced to do it well. And that's when they can start to feel what they need to do. And once they can feel it, then they can fix it. The other challenge is that it's a timing issue as well. And so it's not just that the arms have to be fast, it's not just that the breath recovery has to be fast, they both have to happen at more or less the same time. So we get that seesaw effect that pops the hips up, allows everything to get back in line, and it allows it to happen really, really fast. Especially when they're going over 100 meters or 50 meters, they do not have time to wait for the hips to come back up. They've got to get into the next stroke cycle, and so they've got to be aggressive with the breath, aggressive with the recovery of the arms, and that's going to pop the hips up every time. And so we have to help them learn how to get those skills to all happen at the same time so that they can magnify the impact of each one of those skills so that the hips can come up and swimmers can get back into line fast. In terms of solutions, we have to solve the challenges that we just described. We have to help swimmers feel these skills. We're going to have to force them in some way to get out of the habits that they've already established, to get out of their comfort zone. We're going to have to get them to push what they're doing to the next level, and it's not going to happen just by instructing them. We're going to have to give them tasks that really force them to do things differently, that force them to change what they're doing, and also to feel different ways of moving through the water. Because again, if they can feel it, they can fix it, and if they can fix it, then we're on track. So we have to find strategies that push swimmers to do things differently and to do things better. First strategy is to change the breathing. So as we just discussed, the breath is going to have a big impact on how swimmers get back into line fast. And so in order to get them to understand the impact of the breath recovery, we're going to change the breath. It's very difficult to know exactly how high they should breathe, exactly how they should return from the breath, and exactly what timing for them to use. But by giving them a range of different options, we can help them figure that out. And so we can have them go head up, we can have them go head down. That can be no breath, or it can be with a snorkel. We can have them alternate between head up and head down. We can have them alternate within the same 25, the same lap, one stroke head up, one stroke head down, or one stroke head up, one stroke regular, one stroke head down, one stroke regular. However you want to present it to them, the more variation, the better. We're just helping them understand the impact of the breath in as many different ways as possible. It's also going to help them appreciate the impact of the recovery of the breath, both in terms of the movement itself, as well as how they execute the skill in terms of the intensity. They're going to better understand how that skill influences their alignment. And by giving them lots of different options, by challenging them to be successful in lots of different ways, we're going to help them understand that. So we'll take a look at some of these options. So this here, he's got his head up. He's keeping the head up all the way through. So that's going to drive the hips down. And then when he goes back to regular breaststroke, he's going to be able to better feel the impact of recovering the head when he swims and he breathes in a normal way. Here we got no breath breaststroke. It can also be done with a snorkel. So again, we're taking the breath out, and by having that sensation, having that awareness, and asking them to perform with that different strategy, that's going to help them have more aware of the breath as well, but in a very different way. We're taking it away rather than exaggerating it and keeping the head up the entire time. Here, we're going to go breathing every other stroke. And so again, now they're comparing the regular breath and the lack of breath each and every cycle. And so that's going to help them create more awareness and give them a better feel of what they're doing as well. And you can use this same strategy alternating between a head up and a regular stroke, or even a head up and a head down stroke. Again, variation is key to help them understand the impact of the breath. Another strategy is to change the kick. And so the breaststroke kick can be relatively slow, and that's going to slow down the overall rate of the stroke. If we remove the kick, we either have them use dolphin kick or flutter kick. That's going to allow them to practice at higher stroke rates of the arms, and that allows them to get used to recovering the arms faster. And so we can create an overspeed effect with the arm recoveries, whatever rate they're used to racing at. If they practice at higher rates than that with more consistency, that rate is going to feel a little bit more comfortable. They're going to be used to recovering the arms faster, and that's going to make it easier to execute higher speed recoveries during their actual swimming. It can also add variation. And so the recoveries, they're going to feel slightly different with different kicks, and that's going to create greater awareness of the available strategies in terms of recovering the arms and recovering the arms faster. Dolphin kicking is going to add a little bit more of an undulation to the stroke. Flutter kicking is really going to flatten it out. It's going to force them to be aggressive and forward, and that can help them feel the different options in terms of recovering fast and being aggressive with getting back into line. Pretty straightforward here, breaststroke with flutter kick. And so again, it's the same thing as regular breaststroke. He's just going to have a flutter kick behind him, and that's going to encourage him to be a little bit more aggressive with the arm recoveries. He's going to be able to rate up even higher. And again, that's going to help them understand, how do I get through this cycle? How do I get through this aspect of the stroke faster and faster? Dolphin kick here, helping them, again, changing the kick, allowing them to be a little bit more aggressive with recovering the arms, recovering the body forward. Again, this is going to help them feel a little bit more of an undulation to it as well. But regardless, it's helping them feel, how can I be more arm driven? How can I get through the recovery, through the breath? How can I get back into alignment faster? And again, if they can feel in this context, they can start to apply that and make it happen during regular breaststroke. If we want them to recover the arms fast, a simple way to get them to do that, and the simple way to help them become more aggressive, is to actually resist the recoveries themselves. And so this is where you can put drag socks on the arms. If you don't have access to drag socks, you can just get some old t-shirts and tie them in a knot, and you can have it at the wrist or the elbow or the forearm, wherever you'd like. And with the drag socks themselves, you can have them wear the resistance at different points on the arm. And you can also bunch up the resistance and then place that at different points on the arm as well. And so it'll have a little bit different feel in different positions, but both can be really effective at, again, creating resistance on the arms. And so swimmers are going to have to recover with a lot of aggression, or they're going to get stuck as they move through the recovery. So it forces them to be aggressive. And again, it's forcing them to do something differently. And if they can take the same aggression that they learned to use with the resistance and apply that without the resistance, they're going to be a lot faster with getting through the breath, getting through the recovery, and getting back into alignment faster. So this is one example. This is where he's wearing the drag socks on his wrists. And so again, he's going to have resistance as he goes through the recovery, and he's going to have to recover aggressively, or he's not going to be able to get through that recovery fast and make the timing of breaststroke work. So we're putting more resistance on the recovery itself. That's challenging the swimmer to execute the skill at a higher and higher level. And then when they take the drag socks off, that's going to allow them to be able to move those arms fast, get into line fast. And again, you can be creative in terms of where you place the resistance and how you place the resistance on the arm to challenge swimmers in different ways, and also just to keep the variation high so that they're feeling slightly different things and they're challenged to execute in slightly different ways. Another strategy for some more advanced swimmers is to actually resist the breath. So you can tie a light parachute to the head, and that's going to require swimmers to be really aggressive when recovering the head during the breath. And a lot of swimmers are really passive there, and if they're passive with this activity, they're going to get punished because it's going to be very difficult to get back in a position, and it's going to take forever. And so what's good about this strategy is that swimmers get constant feedback, constant reminders about their breathing, and they're encouraged to breathe well and to breathe fast. Rather than asking swimmers to pay attention and just say, think about your breathing, we're commanding their attention by requiring them to do it and providing them really clear feedback each and every time about whether they were successful or they need to continue to step up their skills and execute at a higher level. So here we can see it in action, and again, he's got to be aggressive with the head recovery, aggressive with the breath recovery, or he's really going to struggle to get back into alignment. And so this is a great way to help swimmers that are getting stuck, that are breathing too high, that are breathing too slow, to give them the feedback they need to make that change. And again, keep the resistance really light. You don't want to cause any problems and you don't want to disrupt the stroke too much. You just want to give them a little bit more feedback about what they're doing and how they're doing it. So with the resistance of the breath, changing the breath, changing the kick, we've got a lot of different options, and I would encourage you to combine them in lots of different ways. And so there's no perfect breathing. Each swimmer is going to be a little bit different. It's hard to predict exactly how a swimmer should breathe, but they do have to find a breathing pattern and a breathing skill and a breathing style that works for them. And so we need to provide them opportunities to make it happen, to learn how to find what they need to do. And the more variation, the more variety, the more variability we can provide, the more likely it is they're going to find a solution that works for them. And again, variation, exploration, those are key aspects of the discovery process. Use as many options as possible, use as many combinations as possible. So you've got the breathing, you've got the kick, you've got the resistance option, and you can pair them in lots of different ways to really encourage swimmers to change how they're swimming. And the more different ways they're exposed to, the more likely it is they're going to find one that's going to work for them. And with all the previous strategies, you got to challenge performance. And that's with stroke rate and that's with speed. And so by using a tempo trainer, you can have them go at certain stroke rates that are a little bit out of their comfort zone and force them to execute, force them to perform. And then you can start pushing the rate, going higher and higher and higher, provided that they can still hold things together. And once they start getting used to using higher stroke rates, then it's time to add the speed component. We don't just want them spinning their arms. We want them to recover fast and be aggressive with it, but it has to be done well. And so you want to make sure that they can create speed at whatever stroke rates you're using. And so you can have them descend at a certain stroke rate. You can have them just try to go as fast as possible at a certain stroke rate. And you can do that with all the different strategies, all the different activities that we talked about. In each case, that's going to put more pressure on them to recover fast, to recover aggressively, and to get back in line more aggressively and more effectively. So by challenging performance, we're giving them concrete goals to shoot for, and they have to execute those and perform in a lot of different situations depending on the different tools that we're using and challenging them with. So with this set, we're challenging them in terms of the breathing, and we're also changing the kick. And so we're going to have them go with a snorkel, so the head down, then we're going to go with the head up, then we're going to go breathe every other stroke, then we're going to go head up every other stroke. And those first four on the odd rounds, they're flutter kicks, so swimmers are going to feel a little bit more rate, they're going to be a little bit flatter, and then on the even rounds, they're going to be a little bit more up and down motion, but still they should be able to get the stroke rate up and be more aggressive as they go through. The first and the fourth round, they're going to build the strong. The second and the fifth, they're going to add fins and build the strong, so they should be going a little bit faster. They got a little bit more speed there. And then on rounds 3 and 6, it's just solid effort throughout. So we're challenging them with different kicking styles. We're challenging them with different breathing styles. We're not putting a whole lot of pressure on performance, but we're getting them to explore. We're getting them to change, and that's going to help them figure out different ways to recover more aggressively, to get back into line faster, and to get back into line more effectively. Next set, we're going to add some intensity to it. So they're going to go 425s breaststroke with drag socks on the wrist. They need to build a fast on those. Odds are flutter kick, evens are breaststroke kick. There, they're going to have to recover aggressively because of the drag socks. And then within each 25, they're going to have to recover even more and more aggressively if they want to build their speed. We're changing up the kick so that they can get a little bit more rate on the odds and then try to make that happen on the evens. Then we're going 450s breaststroke with flutter kick, descend 1 to 4 at 200 stroke rate. So we're having them use the flutter kick so it's a little bit easier to hit that rate. And then they're descending 1 to 4, so they got to find more speed while keeping the rate up. So they got to get better with their skills, but they have to be consistent with the rate. Then we'll go 50 breaststroke strong, see if they can put it together. The next set's done the same way, except it's dolphin kick instead of flutter kick. So a little bit more undulation, but they still need to be really good with the rate. And then the last set is going to be done all breaststroke kick on all the 25s and the 50s, and they're going to finish off with the best 50 breaststroke of the day. So here we're putting resistance on the recoveries, we're changing up the kick, and we're asking them to create speed at higher stroke rates. So challenging the ability to get back into line in a lot of different ways. Last set, we're going to push the speed a little bit more. So they're going to go 3 rounds through. They're going to go 225s breaststroke with a parachute on the head. We're challenging the breathing here. Number 1 flutter, number 2 breaststroke. And then they're going to go for both of those 12.5 head up, 12.5 swim, and they're going to go build a fast. Then they're going to go 225s breaststroke, number 1 flutter kick, number 2 breaststroke kick. Again, 12.5 head up plus 12.5 swim, but now it's fast at 100 stroke rate. So they're going to have their stroke rate up. It's not going to be a maximal rate, it's going to be a fast rate, and they've got to hold things together. They've got to keep everything moving. They got to make that transition from the head up to the regular swim. They're flutter kick on number 1, breaststroke kick on number 2, and they're just going to let it rip, and they're going to see if they can get back in a line fast. They can be really aggressive with that. They can be really good with that. So here we're challenging speed, and now we want to see if swimmers can execute these skills really, really well at high stroke rates, which is ultimately what they're going to have to do in races. If you want to learn more about how to improve breaststroke alignment, check out the video below.